Here we go.
Okay, I will call the Wednesday, July 28th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Chief McMullen, I assume you've taken the roll.
I have the roll.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the minutes of June 23rd.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Additions, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Are there any appearances?
No, ma'am.
If not, I will declare the appearances closed. We will move to item 5, unfinished business. Item A, discussion action of street safety for cars, bikes, pedestrians. I'll just give you an update. There was a neighborhood meeting, community meeting to discuss the proposed modifications to the south end of Winnequa Road. They're going to take, the proposal is to take the bump outs out to put sidewalks on the east side of the street, the east side being the non-lake side, and that is because the majority of people live on the east side of the street, between Winnequa and Monona Drive, and if you put it on the west side, they'd have to cross the street to get to the sidewalk. It's also more cost effective. The topography on the west side is hilly and up and down and hard to put sidewalks in. So the chosen part is the east side. There is a proposal, rather than do a straight sidewalk, to go around some of the trees. There were not plans for any kind of street humps, but the neighborhood is very concerned about speeding. And I would second that. I will tell you that since COVID, there are fewer cars, but they go much faster. So they've asked for speed humps, and I think there may be 2 or 3 speed humps put in on Winnequa. So Chief McMullen, you may want to check on that. There will be every effort to not cut down any trees. Larry was at the meeting. Larry, anything else that you'd like to add? You're on mute.
I muted you, Larry. I apologize. I didn't know if you knew that. You have to unmute yourself, though. There you go.
You must be working with my wife. There was concern about those stone walls on the west side of Winnequa, and nothing is going to happen there. And people were concerned about how wide the sidewalk would be and how wide the terrace would be. And the consultant and the public works folks that were there addressed those issues. I think people still have some concerns because it's change. And, I think the comment about having the sidewalks on the east side of the street is because that's where all of the connector streets come. And people coming down those streets, if the walkway is on the west side, they'd have to cross Winnequa Road to do that. So there were a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. I think they did a pretty good job of addressing those concerns. I don't know that anybody's going to be completely happy, but I mean, it's like that every time you make some kind of significant change. I think there was a misunderstanding too, that they were going to take up the whole street and not just the top 1.5 inches of blacktop and resurface that. That would have been a much more expensive project than what they're doing. So they're going to take up that first 1.5 inches and put new blacktop, new striping and everything else on there.
The other thing is there will be another meeting on September 22nd, I believe. The issue of parking came up, and right now what is allowed is that you can't park in the summer months, but you can park from, I think, November 15th till March 15th. They're taking the parking lane out, so you'd have to park in the, if they allowed winter parking going forward with the improvements, you'd have to park in the bike lane. And while you could, there's nothing that precludes you from doing that, there is a liability issue for the city. And so there was concern about taking the proposal is 5 foot sidewalk, 5 foot terrace. They looked at no terraces, but they have mailbox. We have mailboxes, so you have to have a place for the mailbox. So they're now looking at maybe cutting the terrace back a foot, because when you take that off, there's no parking, and you're taking 10 feet of driveway off where guest cars could park. So there was discussion about putting in 2 or 3 bump ins, not bump outs, bump ins where you cut in, which would allow for parking for some of the houses, because the driveways on the east side of the street tend to be smaller than the driveways on the west side. So that's the latest update that I can tell you, and we will keep you posted. But this came out of a recommendation by the Bike Ped Committee. They are suggesting, I saw Doug Wood say someplace that, that there's a figure of 4,000 cars and 1,000 bikes on a busy day going by there. I question those numbers, but so be it. So that's all I have to report on that item. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
If it's a whole topic, including like pedestrian safety, I've just got something not related to that. Would now be the time to mention that?
Well, I put the issue of safety for cars, bikes, and peds just to talk about what's going on, because normally that's a public works decision, but in the past, public safety has been consulted. So I just want you to know what the city's doing relative to those items in case we have any input.
Okay. The only thing I was talking about is some of the signage on Monona Drive. The pedestrian signs are obstructed by trees. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to bring that up, or if that's something that doesn't even concern this committee.
Yep, I certainly can. So you're saying the ped signs on Monona Drive are
some of them, especially where Femrite tees into Monona Drive. There's a pedestrian crossway there where there's signs, and one of the signs as you're going towards the Broadway, you can't even see the sign until you're right there. It's just as, because we're talking about this, I'm looking as I'm walking around at certain things that I never would have before.
Okay, I will bring that issue up with Dan Stefani.
All right, thank you.
Good, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, we'll move to item 5, discussion action on the city's noise ordinance. You got in the packet, the chief included a bunch of items, and I thought, Chief Cheney Austin, how best to address this, because the committee isn't going to be crafting something, but rather we're better at reacting to something. So I guess I would like to hear from you if you have thought about the ones that you included, what you think would work, and put some things forward for the committee to think about, and then we'll have to get Bill Cole involved to get him to rewrite an ordinance that changes it to a way that you and he think is more appropriate for the city and works for us. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think I put this out here for this committee's input so that it doesn't fall solely on things that I might think are good. So I want to include your input in whatever draft ordinance that the city attorney and I will work on together before having to, not have any of that input. And then sometimes it involves starting from scratch if we're totally off base.
This came up in part because Breakwater, which is down at the yacht club, came in for a permit to do live music, amplified music on top of their outdoor level. And they wanted to extend the days this year from, am I correct, Chief, Wednesday to Sunday?
It's nearly all throughout the summer, Wednesday through Sunday.
And so as we think about that now, that doesn't seem to be a problem for the people across the way because they have modified it and they actually have worked to lower the sound. But there is, I think, one home that is up on the hill. I forget the street it's on. It's not across the street. They had significant complaints or concerns about it. In addition, I think the East Side Club wanted to expand when they were doing theirs. So it's mostly when restaurants, bars want to have outdoor music. And I mean, the issues as I see them, and it's the time and how many days of the week do you allow that to happen?
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Chief. That's
Thank you for that synopsis and summary, Alder. You're spot on. There are a couple of concerns that I presented and I have as Chief of Police. One of being in which you're talking about businesses applying for amplification permits. And as Alder mentioned, the concern I have is that I am the sole decider at this point as to the frequency in which those permits are authorized and allowed. And there's no option for public input. And I think that should be something that is considered. Because right now it lands in front of my desk. I look at it, I review it, and I acknowledge, I sign off. If there's no complaint history there in particular, there's no pause. And so I think that this provides opportunity for public to provide input potentially if the ordinance is crafted that shifts responsibility and or creates a forum in which public can provide some input. The other thing I had, and I talked to Attorney Cole about this, is that I have some concerns that by me as a chief of police issuing a permit for amplification, then thereby having to be the person responsible for compliance and in essence, possibly issuing a citation for the very citation or for the very permit in which I am issuing. Attorney Cole agrees with me that creates a conflict of interest and presents some challenges in court. And he's not here to speak for himself, but I'm confident that he's okay with me sharing that in this forum. And then perhaps at a later date when we present whatever draft ordinance, I can ask Attorney Cole to be sure that he's present for this so that he can speak on that as well.
so the question I have is, and we would likely be the committee that it would come to. So requests for those would come to us. I've talked to the city. You would normally think that they might come before the License Review Committee for licensed establishments. But Joan didn't think that made sense. And Joan Andrews, the city clerk who staffs that committee, and she had good rationale for it. So Chief, are you suggesting that we make the decision, yes, they can have it, or that we recommend a decision to you? And I would follow that up and say, I note in the information that the packets that you sent us, some municipalities have it go through committee and some have it go through the police chief. So I am perfectly willing to, I concur that having a public forum is a good thing, but that means one of two things. Either we advise and recommend to you, or we decide. But I guess if we decide, I do think that it makes sense for, and I'm trying to think of other things like this. Well, licenses for one thing. They asked the police chief for a report or a review. For example, if you are an establishment who has the trouble, you've had many police calls to and other things, and you want to consider, then you get a report from the police chief saying they support it or they don't support it. So in your mind, are you thinking that you would, I mean, you could say you have no reason you see no reason to deny it. I mean, there's no reason from a police perspective to deny the request for a amplification license, or that you recommend it, you don't recommend it, you stay silent. What's your thought on how we would handle any advice or consent from the police department in making the decision?
Yeah, I'm happy to issue the permit, but I will guarantee you in my tenure, it's going to be on the advice and recommendation of some committee. So it'd be at the Public Safety Committee. So I don't plan on overruling any advice this committee gives, or recommendations that this committee gives on when it comes to issuing a permit for an entity. So I'm happy to be the authority in that retains the authority to sign off, but just know that it's going to be based on your recommendation. So that's where my thought process was. You might as well keep it as a committee has the authority and the authorization to issue, but I'm good with either.
So does the committee, Larry?
Yeah, I was looking at the other ordinances, and I noticed that Madison has Parks Director and a committee look at this, and McFarland has their Public Safety Committee and the Village Board look at this. So, I mean, those are avenues for public input into the decision, or a recommendation that would be made to the police chief, who would then have the job of enforcement if it ever comes to that.
The reason that some have public safety and that we're considering it is when you look at it, it comes under the scope of public welfare, public interest, public health, public safety kind of. That's why, and that's under the purview of public safety. That's why it would come here as opposed to like the park board.
So I was wondering, in the cases of those municipalities, who makes the decision or the recommendation to the police chief?
Well, in some instances, it's the Public Safety Committee. In some instances, as I read it, in some instances, it's the Park Board. And in some instances, it's the police. Angela, did you want to say something?
I did. If the chief has the final say, would it still be a conflict again when issuing tickets what's the difference?
Chief?
Yeah, Angela, thank you very much. I guess that's why I was asking for somebody else to be the issuing authority, because I still see that conundrum, right? Where according to our city attorney, as I suspected, there will be a conflict if I am the issuing authority. However, I'm telling you that if I have to go to court on this, I'm going to say that I am basing my decision based on a committee's recommendation that I issue. So that's my attempt to get around that conflict, but it's.
You know, there is no reason why we couldn't. I mean, you can craft it such that at the upfront, before we make a decision, we say to the chief, do you have a recommendation on this application? and we can get his recommendation, we can then make the decision, and we've made the decision, but he is the one who actually then implements the decision by issuing the permit. You know, and I'm confident that since the city attorney will be drafting this, he won't draft something that creates a conflict.
I had another couple of questions. In this approval, is there any indication of a decibel level that's allowable? And could there be some reduction in decibel level as it gets later in the evening?
I raised the issue of decibel levels, and I think that can be challenging. There was one instance in this city, you know, some of us go back a long ways, about issues of decibel levels, and it had to do on Monona Drive, and it wasn't amplified sound, but it was a violation of the ordinance because there was a business that had something on their roof, whether it was the air conditioner, the exhaust fan, or something that bothered the neighbors who were behind them. It was in the neighborhood across maybe from the high school. And we measured that by decibel levels because you're not supposed to have something that at your lot line that the sound you create is greater than so many decibels. And we used it that time. But, you know, when you talk about decibels, the decibel level for this one, right across the street, right across the water from breakwater, doesn't seem to be a problem, but it is up on the hill because if water and wind change sound. So Chief, you dealt with this probably more than I have, but I was led to believe that it's very challenging to introduce the decibel levels.
If
I didn't
may,
know.
go ahead.
I didn't, I just was a question I had.
Yep.
Yeah, if I may, from an enforcement standard and from a practical side, I would really prefer there to us to retain the reasonable person standard and what's reasonable in the eyes of describing the totality of the circumstances. Yes, I was at a residence from 2 blocks away as a police officer based on the complaint. I could feel the walls shaking. I could hear, you know, the noise at a loud level that, you know, disrupted normal life. You know, you can articulate the unreasonableness. And I think as a tool, we do have decibel meters here. We can use that to sort of codify that totality of circumstances and measure what the actual decibel was at the location of the complaint. So I would prefer to leave the numerical values out, but that I'll defer to the body.
If I could just jump in on what the chief just said, that responding to numerous noise complaints in the middle of the night, I was looking at those charts and things, and on one hand, from a detective standpoint, for the evidence and the report and court and so on and so forth, the decibel level is great. I mean, it's there or it's not. But from a practical sense, as an officer, I was reading some of these ordinances. You don't almost have to be a sound technician to try to sort through all that information. And I don't know if 1 o'clock on a Friday night, and you're busy, you got your meter out there, you're looking at the ordinance, or do we have it, do we not? I really would agree with the chief in terms of looking at the totality and being able to describe exactly what you're hearing at that time. I think that would be a much stronger case at the end of the day.
Connie, did you want to say something? You're on mute.
Yeah, I was wondering, have we done decibel measurements on these complaints that we've had, especially the one house on the hill, to see if they do have a case? And what's going on with that?
We've not had any founded noise complaints on the case of the breakwater. We had a complaint that we were able to try to follow up on, but we've not had any founded complaints of unreasonable noise at the breakwater. And we mentioned breakwater, but I can tell you that all of those establishments adjacent to them also have noise amplification permits. So it's not just the breakwater who's playing outdoors amplified music. It's Buck and Honey's, it's the tasting room. They all have it. And I'm assuming as the city grows and as there's more multi-use complexes and there's establishments and businesses that go on the bottom halves, that might be something that other businesses are going to want to do as well. And so that's why this is perfect timing.
And part of this is also common sense. There can be a reasonable noise level, but if it's a kind of music that you cannot stand and you have to listen to it 5 nights a week, is that reasonable to subject those people to that? Or is it balanced to say allow it 3 nights a week? You know, that's part of the challenge. I mean, I listen to motorboats because I live on the water, and I listen to the music from the Coliseum. And I don't mind the music from the Coliseum a few nights because people are there. But if I had to listen to that 7 nights a week, you can bet I'd be on the phone to my county board supervisor saying it. And it's not that it's so loud I can't do anything. It's that it's just at any level, that music is annoying to me. So there is a balance of you know, being a good neighbor and people playing. I have neighbors, I've had neighbors who have music and they have their phonographs playing in their backyard. And their music taste is not what mine is. But, you know, they're my neighbors and I'm willing to tolerate it. Would I like it 365 days a year? No. And so part of the issue, and I think this is in part where the chief is coming from, and the council is asking this, they've expanded the number of times they want to play it. And if you've got one place playing it 5 nights a week, then you've got somebody else like Buck and Honey's wants to do it another 5 nights a week, and everybody has to listen. And even though it might violate the noise ordinance in that in how loud it is, it's still there. So some of this is reasonable. You know, you got to accept some of it, but how much of it? And so that's when it comes to the committee, that's the balance, I think. Do you say 3 nights? Do you say 4 nights? Do you, and I think this is part of the challenge that the chief has. And so he's looking for Solomon's wisdom. And we expect that from the committee.
Alder, if I may, some communities have capped the amount of permits that they issue, so that, say, for example, a business has 30 in the year from this month to this month, and it's up to the business to decide how best to use that amplification, those 30 days. I mean, I'm just throwing up an example here. And then the other thing I'll have to ask, please, for input on is, we had a wonderful 4th of July community fest. I guarantee you that the music from that, if somebody were to complain, would technically have been found in violation of the current ordinance. So that's something that I would like this body to consider as well. Should we create an exemption to the ordinance for a particular city-sponsored event?
Yeah, I'm told the city doesn't have to. I asked for permits because we do the band concert down in the park on Tuesday nights, and we don't need to get a permit because we're the city.
Yes, Alder, that's my understanding, but the community fest is not.
No, they're not.
I think that would be considered maybe a partnership event.
Well, it's not a city spot. They're a totally 501c3 corp. And the people, Bisbee knows this because Jim Bisbee used to be president of the festival committee. And the neighbors down there are willing to tolerate. I mean, not all. I mean, Jim, what's your experience with the festival and the neighbors?
Typically, the majority of them we have no issue with. It's always 1 or 2 maybe. But, it's more so that the music that goes in 1 minute beyond midnight. That's when the police would get the calls. That's when we got the complaints. They accept the fact that it's gonna be 9 to midnight or whatever, a couple times a year. We purposely tried to deflect the speakers away from the houses, so it wasn't facing the east side. That is not the case with the new committee for whatever reason. But I don't know how much effect that really had on the overall sound anyway. But I would say that for the most part, we really didn't have as much issue as we thought we would. But again, after one minute after midnight, the phones start ringing.
I can thank you, Mr. Bisbee, for that his history lesson. I'm learning a lot around here, which is great. As the ordinance stands, technically, I can't issue a permit for anything outside of the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So 9 p.m., that permit is null and void. So that's why I'm thinking that there needs to be.
Somehow we've gotten around it.
It's not been enforced.
I mean, it's the same thing. Well, I won't go there, but it was the same thing. I was surprised that they don't card anyone going into the fenced area during the day. But they start at 6 o'clock. If you're under 21, you can't get in the fenced area, but 5 o'clock you can. So, I think, do you need any more thoughts from the committee, Chief? I think the best thing is if you and the city attorney would craft something so that we could react to specifics on the ordinance, time, how long, and leave some flexibility. I think that's, because one of the things that I expect and I have experienced with the committees is that there's usually a great deal of common sense applied to things. And sometimes if you make hard and fast rules, there's something that comes up where you need an exception and you say, I'd like to do it, but the ordinance doesn't allow us to do this. So if you and Attorney Cole could craft something that we could react to and respond to in terms, if you want to limit the number of times you want to do it, if you want to put something in which says, without complaints, and if there are legitimate complaints, that they have to come back. That's what Plan Commission did in a couple of times. If there were if we did it and there were a lot of legitimate complaints about people abusing it, they come back to the committee to talk about it, to get it reviewed. But if you could do that so we could react and respond to the specifics of it, that would be helpful, I think. Does that work for you?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I was really looking for some beginner input so that we can get started, making sure we're not on the completely wrong path. And so we all see eye to eye here, I think, and we will come back with a draft version. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to item 6, discussion action on 22 capital budgets for police, dispatch, fire, and EMS. And this is a recommendation that we will review the proposals by the 2 chiefs for their capital purchases. We can make suggestions about yes, no, whatever, and then it goes to the mayor and the city administrator, who takes all of the capital budget requests and puts together their budget for the council to review. So who wants to start?
I'm going to defer to Chief McMullen if he's ready, because I will want to try to work on sharing my screen so we can follow along. Alder, is that okay?
It's whatever, you're in charge.
I agree. Chief Cheney Austin is in charge, and I'm okay with that. So, good evening, happy people. How are you folks tonight? Good to see everybody. I'm feeling much refreshed after the vacation in Colorado. So let me scroll down to the fire budget here, so I can talk off of that rather than just talk off the cuff. So the first big change you're going to see for the fire department budget is it's now a combined budget. It is no longer 2 separate budgets. one of the things I noted when I started was we had two completely separate budgets, both operationally and capital budget. And I'll be frank, we're a single department. We're not two departments. So I spoke with the administrator, made sure he was okay with it. So we're submitting it as a single budget this year and going forward, both capital and operational. We're not separate departments. We're a single department. So the mayor's guidance that she sent out was roughly about 85,000 between the two departments from last year is what the guidance we were given. You'll notice my total is significantly higher than that. So when I created my capital budget, I created 6 different budgets. Sat down with the mayor a few weeks ago to kind of go through them and let her know what my thoughts are, which is why you see what's included here. So I'm going to start at the top for 2022. Number one project for the fire department is going to be the lift system and the power cot for our primary ambulance. So current standards, every ambulance you buy nowadays should have a lift system in it. The main cause is to prevent back injuries with our staff. Again, when I started, I was kind of shocked that our new 2019 ambulance didn't have a power load system in it. So in reaching out through our employees and through our volunteers, this came out as the number one item that folks are looking for because right now, if they load a patient in the back of the ambulance, they have to lift the cot wholesale. It is a power cot, but they have to lift and hold the cot while they're lifting the legs. The power cot or the power load system actually loads it for them. All they have to do is get it connected and the ambulance does all the work for them. So that particular line item is about $42,000. That's for a new load system installed in the current ambulance and the new power cot, which was already budgeted for in the previous capital budget. So we already had in 2022 the purchase of a new cot based on its replacement life. I've added a lift system with that. We would take the existing, what's called a power load, which is a manual system, but it charges the power cot, and put that in the reserve ambulance, which currently has nothing. It has a power cot, but no ability to charge. So we would reuse the existing system in the new ambulance to go into the old ambulance and give us the ability to charge our power cots. The cot coming out of Medic 60 would also go into 62, which is our reserve ambulance. And the cot that's in 62 would be sold. It's exceeding its 7-year lifespan, which comes from Stryker. You'll notice the future cost on that about $1,200. One of the other items that I found upon starting is we don't have a maintenance plan for our Stryker power cots or our stair chairs. They need to have somebody come in and actually certify them every year because they're a patient movement device. So the operational costs I'll absorb into my operational budget as part of the equipment maintenance fund. But so that's the number one project we have for next year is a lift system and power cot for our primary ambulance. And I'm happy to take questions if people have questions while I'm talking. So number 2 item on that is a standard replacement item we do every year. It's the turnout gear replacement. I actually came back this year and actually asked for more money because of the number of suits of gear we had that were expired. One of the things that's changed in recent years is gear expires every 10 years per NFPA guidelines. And normally, and when I started, or even back when Chief Cheney Austin started, NFPA guidelines were a bit looser, and MATC, which is where we get a lot of our certified fire training, was able to overlook a lot of things. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. If your gear is out of date, they will not let you into the burn tower, strictly because of liability purposes. They let everybody know about 5 years ago that this was coming. They actually implemented it last year, and everybody acted like they were shocked when they actually implemented it. I was not, which is why we started replacing our gear. So that budget line item of $25,000 is approximate about 10 sets of gear. Right now we have 51 members on the department. I'm expecting that to grow to anywhere between 55 and 60 as we get more space for volunteers. So we're trying to be a little bit proactive. The gear replacements have been a little bit behind. which is why that dollar amount's a little bit higher. Also with price increases every year. We did rebid the turnout gear this year. We got the price down from $2,600 per set down to $2,200 per set. So we're saving about $400 for the same quality of gear, same spec. Just made people compete for it a little bit rather than just assume they had a guaranteed in to providing us with gear. So that will be a recurring capital budget item every year. That dollar amount may fluctuate slightly, but it's an ongoing project. Some years it'll be this, some years it might be 20,000, depending on what we have to replace based on our schedule. We're currently monitoring every set of gear that we have, which is also new. So we'll be able to adjust it based on yearly averages, what we need to replace. The third item that I have, again, is going to be an ongoing project. Again, something that hasn't been dealt with is the wearing out and the replacement of portable radios, probably the #1 piece of equipment that we use. And instead of coming to you folks and saying, hey, we need $250,000 for portable radios, I would rather break that apart and replace them on a regular basis and rotate the radios through from the busiest trucks to the less busy trucks to the oldest trucks to training, and make sure we're cycling our radios on a regular basis. Lifespan for portables is approximately 10 years based on DOJ guidance. I would say based on our department, we should get 10 years out of them. I think police probably replace them a little bit more frequently than we do, but they also use them 24/7, where ours are used basically on it when a call comes in. So that's $10,000 a year. That's based on current pricing for portables, including a collar mic, the battery, the charger. That's 4 portables a year. What it gets us is every 8 years, we'll rotate through all the portables that we currently have in stock. So as they cycle out and get older, we'll use them for training, we'll use them for special events. And as they break, we'll end up disposing of them instead of having to pay to fix them. Number 4 is also going to be another ongoing item, something else. I keep saying something else, and I apologize. One of the items that we don't have on a regular basis is durable equipment replacement. The fire department over the years, and this is true of many fire departments, tends to be reactive. I tend to be proactive. I know that there's going to be hose that bursts every year. I know that hose is going to get degraded. I know it needs to be replaced. I know ladders are going to break. Nozzles are going to fail. SCBA bottles, so far I've repaired 6 of them since I've started, just based on training. They get damaged during training. Luckily, I've had parts to replace them and repair them in-house. So this particular line item is, again, going to be a rotating line item of, we have our ladders checked on an annual basis. If one fails, we have the ability to replace it. If we have a backboard that fails, we have the ability to replace it. Right now, if something fails, we try and find a place to put it in the operational budget because we don't have a line item for durable equipment replacement. All of the equipment we're looking at exceeds a 5-year lifespan normally. I can tell you that the ladders in the department probably exceed my time doing fire and EMS. I'll be generous. And they've probably never been tested. Last time I know they've been tested was 2007. That's the last record I can find of actually annual testing of our ground ladders. Those have to be done annually. The aerial has to be done annually. And stuff breaks during the testing, and I'd rather it break during testing and get replaced than when I have a person up on it. So that's the number 4 thing. Again, that'll be an ongoing item. Again, that'll fluctuate based on the inventory that we have and what's being tested on any given year. So those are my top 4. That's how I did this. The top 4 items are the high priority items. The bottom 3, which I'll talk about next, are new projects I talked about with the mayor that exceed the guidelines she gave. But when I looked at my capital budget in upcoming years and working with the public safety building that's now on the radar, we have an engine that's due in 2024, already in the capital budget. What I'm trying to do is kind of smooth those capital budget items so we have a more steady capital budget and not an $850,000 cost in 2024 when we're trying to build a public safety building, which may or may not be in 24, but I'm trying to provide a more stable capital budget across multiple years. So number 5, rescue boat. One of the things that took me by surprise when I started here is that they've never had a boat here. And we're a city of the lakes, and we've never had a rescue boat. In years past, Dane County has had a rescue boat on Lake Monona, which has been available to help people who are having boating emergencies. As of 3 years ago, that boat came off of Lake Monona. There is no longer a Dane County boat stationed on our lake. They have one on Mendota. They have one on Kaganza. The boat that used to be on our lake is now considered a flexible boat, and it's off the water, and they deploy it if they need it. The only other options that we have on our lake is calling McFarland to come up. Currently, their boat is, I'm going to say 4 generations old, a Dane County Sheriff's boat that they bought for $1 about 16 years ago, and Madison has to be able to get their boat in the water as well and come across the lake. So far this year, I've logged about 20 calls right off of our shoreline that they're calling for lake rescue. The average response time is running about 20 to 24 minutes for them to get a boat out to somebody in our lake. We cover about 40% of the shoreline. So what I did is research what would be the best fit for us. We don't need a boat like Madison. We need something that can be either deployed or in the water very quickly, can haul 1 or 2 people out of the water, get 2 people out there quickly. The other thing I look for is something that can be grant funded as opposed to city funded. So I put this in there. Even if it gets taken out, I need people to be aware that I'm working on this project, so nobody's taken by surprise if I get a grant for a rescue boat. And people are like, what the heck? I didn't know you were even looking at a boat, and now you have a new vehicle in our fleet that we have to pay for that we weren't aware of. So this project costs us approximately $35,000. The boat itself will run $24,916 plus shipping, which I didn't determine yet, plus the equipment to outfit it. The other side of this boat project is I'm always looking for ways that will draw volunteers to our department over other departments. We're a combination department. I want our volunteer department to be strong. This is a type of activity that you just simply don't get in volunteer departments. And as long as our volunteers are willing to go through the boat safety course, they would be allowed to staff the boat during holiday weekends, busy weekends out on the lake, and be able to deploy it if we need it. It's something we can offer to volunteers that doesn't cost us anymore once we purchase it, but it's something they can't do in other places. So, yes.
Where would you store the boat?
I'm working on storing it and doing more of a public-private partnership for the next few years until we get a public safety building that can house it in the wintertime.
I mean, in the water, would you keep it in the water, and where would you keep it?
At this, right now, my initial discussions, I've reached out to the yacht club. I've also reached out to a couple of the private places to see if they have slips available. There are actually multiple slips available around the city, so I would try and work out basically a donation to have them put it in the water and keep it there during the boating season.
Buck and Honey, have you tried Buck and Honeys?
I have reached out to them, yes.
Okay.
I figure I've eaten enough lunches there that they can at least listen to me, so. So that's why this is on here. Whether or not the Public Safety Committee determines it's viable to push forward or not. I also wanted you folks to all be aware of it, that we'll be reaching out through grant funding to try and offset the cost of this. So even if it gets put into the budget and pushed forward to the council and the mayor, that we're going to work on getting grant funding for this, similar to what we did for the ice rescue equipment last year. So that's why that's in here. And number 6, same type of issue. So what we have for brush protection right now, our brush, and I'm going to use the air quotes of brush truck, happens to be retired Chief Van Etten's old chief vehicle that Walmart paid to install a skid unit on because they built their parking ramp too low. So we had to have some type of equipment to get underneath there. And unfortunately, when they put that on the truck, it's quite a bit overweight by about 800 pounds. It exceeds what that truck's supposed to actually carry. They did put some extra springs and stuff on the back, but it was never designed to carry the amount of weight that it's carrying. So even though that is technically a 4-wheel drive brush truck, I would never take that on anything other than a hard surface because it would sink into the marsh. We protect a lot of marshland. We have a lot of parkland in the city. What I'm looking for is a vehicle that is a multi-use vehicle that can actually take the weight of that existing skid unit, which saves us about $15,000. We can transfer that into it. also work as a utility truck, which we do not have. Currently, if we have any type of structure fire, thankfully we have Chief Eckloff on the department, and his truck is used as a utility truck to haul stuff back and forth. Currently, we have no way of hauling dirty hose from a fire or training back to the station except for Chief Eckloff's truck. We simply have nothing available. So this would be a multi-use vehicle. It would be able to tow the boat. It would be able to tow other things in the future. It can handle the weight of the skid. It's still small enough to get underneath Walmart and all the new condos that are going up that have underground parking. This can actually get in there and work on vehicle fires. Part of the cost of this can be offset. At the last council meeting, the council approved, or at least had the first reading of, I shouldn't say approved, had the first reading of an MOU for the DNR that allows us to write for a grant to offset 50% of our costs with building a new brush truck. So any of the equipment, any of the lighting, any of the emergency equipment, we can write a grant and get reimbursed for up to 50% of the cost.
Have you talked to Walmart about covering part of the cost of this?
I have not.
Okay, I will give you the name of Lisa Nelson, who's a former council member, who is the state regional person who gives out big grants for Walmart.
Okay,
And
fabulous.
and we can, and they like to give out big money, not little money, but big money. So I'll come down and talk to you about it, and I'll make the connection
Fabulous.
with her, okay?
Yes, any type of public-private partnership that we can do, I am all for. Anything we can reduce the tax burden on, I'm all for. So
We
again,
can also talk to the owner of Galway, who has built both of those apartment units down there if you're going underground. So we can also talk to them. So
excellent. Last thing I have, and this is probably the most interesting one, is the one that's listed as number 7. What I tried to do with this capital budget is, again, smooth it out over multiple years. So we have an engine that's in the budget in 2024 for $850,000. That's what's in the capital budget for that year. What I did is I took a look at that engine. The apparatus committee was actually formed early this year to start looking at what's the best way that we can do this to minimize the cost of the taxpayers and still get what we need for an engine. There's a couple, 3 options they're still looking at, but what I can do ahead of time, you'll see this is equipment that would be part of the purchase for the new engine, moved ahead by 2 years. And in the overall capital budget worksheet you'll see that we'll be putting half of the engine 4 purchase in 23 and half in 24 to kind of spread that impact out, so we're not hitting an $850,000 bill in 2024. Again, one of my goals is to give a stable capital budget, but also give some relief to the taxpayers. And if you look at this year, next year, and 2024, you'll notice it doesn't add up to $850,000. As it stands right now, we're looking at about 770. So we're already looking at trimming about $80,000 off of that, what was already in the capital budget for 2024, and then spreading it out over 3 years. What this allows us to do is, the new engine that was purchased in 2017 has a battery operated cutter on it and a built-in hydraulic set of extrication tools. Everything on engine 4, which is our backup engine, the one that's going to be replaced, and squad 5 are old hydraulic extrication tools, all of which need service right now. The 2 pumps on both those trucks are both non-functioning, and the cost to repair those is about $8,000. You know, once you put fire in front of it, it gets expensive. This allows us to purchase a set of battery operated tools that would go on engine 4 as it sits right now, and we get rid of all of the hydraulic tools except what's new on engine 2. So it gives us consistency between the 2 engines. The second part of this is rescue struts. The rescue struts that we use, which is what supports vehicles if we have a significant accident, which, given the state of the flex lane on the belt line, is going to be more consistent rather than less. The rescue struts that we're currently using were bought with engine 4 back in 2004. They've exceeded their lifespan, and the new style of struts are actually safer to operate. We did a 2-month tryout of 6 different rescue struts with the fire department to get people's feedback on what was the best, what was the worst, what works, what's safe, what isn't. The dollar amount that's in there covers 2 sets of rescue struts, which is enough for both engines. And again, this is stuff that would be bought with a new engine, but we're trying to move it forward to try and smooth things out a little bit. The maintenance costs on this are already built into the budget. We already do an annual maintenance on all of our extrication equipment. The cost to repair it is going to exceed that by several $1,000s. Right now, the goal with all of this on number 7 is to get Squad 5 decommissioned and pushed out the door next year instead of 2024. That saves us 2 years of maintenance, 2 years of oil changes, 2 years of tires, batteries. When we know a vehicle is going to be decommissioned anyway, this is the equipment we would need to buy to be able to decommission the squad. So that also answers a question for where we'd store the rescue boat in the off season. We free up a base space, and it allows us a little bit more room when we're so crowded right now that you all know how crowded we are, so I won't go there. But that's the 7 items that are in my capital budget for 2022. I welcome questions, ideas, thoughts, what you would like to include, what you would not like to include. These are what I consider secondary projects as opposed to the top 4, which are my top tier projects. But this is what I spoke with the mayor about. I just did not get any guidance from her since I spoke with her about it. So that's why I put them in here.
Well, if those that go through, you'll get guidance from when she reviews the total capital budget.
Yes.
But some of them certainly make sense. So, does the committee have, I can't see the committee members, so I can't see who, now I can see you. Do any of you have questions or comments, suggestions, proposals? If not, what I will do is entertain a motion to recommend approval of the 2020 capital budget as proposed by Chief McMullen. So, any questions? Nobody's got any questions. Anybody got a motion?
I make a motion to accept the 2022 budget by Chief Austin.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Aye.
Chief, for a thoughtful budget proposal.
I appreciate it. And I also appreciate that you took it easy on me without questions. So I am available if questions come to you after this. So thank you
Well,
very much.
What I'll tell you is that the better explanation you have and the more sensible your request, the fewer questions you get. So if you have no questions, it must have been pretty sensible and pretty rational.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Chief, I'll just tell you that I kind of went over these budgets with my wife, and she, with regard to the boat, said she thought the city should have had a boat a long time ago. And she decided that if she wins the lottery, she's going to donate one to the city. So,
Larry, I'll actually buy her 5 tickets if she's willing to do that.
So talk to me about, Chief, I know of someone that maybe we can ask to donate a boat. I mean, to buy a boat, not donate an existing one.
I appreciate it. And again, I am all about public-private partnerships. Anything we can do to reduce the tax burden, I'm all about that. So
So
that's
we'll
the real goal.
talk about who we can hit up for some donations
I
for
appreciate it.
several of the items. Okay. Chief Cheney Austin,
Okay, thank you.
are you ready?
Yeah, I'll pull up the screen here. Give me a second. And while I do that, I'll just say that Chief McMullen and I obviously interact a lot. We have standing meetings, and I will echo some of the comments made about boats. You know, police respond to incidents in the water as well, along with fire, and oftentimes we're the first ones to get there, and we're told to see what we can see with no indication on how long it's going to take for a fire response. And so I wholeheartedly, along with the other items in the chief's budget requests for capital projects, I 100% from a law enforcement perspective appreciate the consideration for the vote as well. So, all right, there's my praise to you, Jerry. I will start with the law enforcement section. Bear with me as I'm looking off screen if you're looking at me instead of what I'm sharing here. We'll start by talking about what I've eliminated in my quest to prioritize what really is important now, what the police department can do without, what we can pass along for later years and later capital budget cycles, all in an effort to try to save what we can now, given the state of affairs. And so what I had eliminated from previous plans from my predecessor for 2022 are the additions of squad laptop and modems for the incoming squad vehicles. And that originally was priced out at $1,200 or $12,500. I saw the need to potentially save and reuse what we have now, and we think pretty confident that it'll give us another year to extend so that we don't necessarily have to purchase that this year for the new squads that I'll cover in a little bit. In addition to that, taser replacements, we traditionally like to replace 2 tasers per year. At the 7-year mark, we have had tasers last about 6.5 to 7 years. And so the 7-year mark is where typically we aim for a replacement of our 14 tasers. The tasers are under a 5-year warranty. And what we've done is that we've eliminated that need this year because we've had, frankly, fewer officers working this year because we have been too short. So the officers currently share the tasers right now, and there are 2 tasers, obviously, with the 2 officers not being here, they get utilized fewer. And so we're able to rotate the tasers, less frequently and use them less often than they were if we were 100% fully staffed. Now that, of course, will change next year. We will have the need to make sure we replace those next year as we will be fully staffed. All right, I will go to the first item, which is the police squad vehicles and equipment. Looking to replace a marked squad and an unmarked squad. We replace our marked squad every 5 years. When I first looked at something that said 2017, I said, well, how many miles does it have on it? By the time that we actually get the squad, it will likely have over 100,000 miles, which if that was a Honda Accord or something similar, I think that would be no problem. We use these squads, I think, as you know, oftentimes, throughout the day, they're running, they're on, the engine, even if idle, is running, and that's more wear and tear. They are in the elements every year, and so they do deteriorate as they get used every single day throughout all the shifts. So that 2017 Ford Explorer that's currently in patrol is one of our oldest in the fleet, and it has very high mileage on it. And so that will need to be replaced, or else we'll be a squad short, because I very much doubt that squad will continue to have any life left. Our unmarked squads, we typically try to replace once every 10 years. And so we're looking at a 2013 Chevy Impala that I believe was purchased in 2012, if memory serves. That is utilized for our detectives, and it is also ending sort of its lifespan with the police department. My hope, because I really focused as well, I know Jerry is too, on sustainability and thinking about our carbon footprint. My hope is to look into continuing the trend of getting Ford Explorer hybrids for the marked patrol squads. Particularly this year, I'm thinking that is our best option, is a 2022 Ford Explorer hybrid. However, I'm also entertaining the concept of looking into potentially any other vehicles out there that are more fuel efficient and also provide the space and the availability of internal aftermarket equipment that we can provide prisoner transports, for example, with a cage in it, that aren't necessarily a Ford Explorer. And so that's just a general exploration, just keeping my eyes and ears open to what's out in the market, what might be useful for the officers, and what also might be have a less of an impact to our world with respect to carbon emissions. That said, I really have more options when it comes to the unmarked detective squad. In my role, in my previous employment with the Madison Police Department, I was in charge of our fleet operations, and the coordinator who worked under me that was in charge of the 200 plus vehicles that the City of Madison Police Department had, and worked with the facilities to really start looking at all electric vehicles for detective squads or unmarked squads. And one of the things that they recently did is they purchased and acquired Tesla Model 3s. Those are all electric vehicles, and surprisingly, they are not any significantly more expensive than what a Chevy or a Ford Fusion would be, for example, when it comes to equipping them and getting them street ready. And the savings, obviously, with what you get with an all-electric vehicle versus a hybrid or a gas combustion engine is significant when you think about long-term savings. So that's something that I'm looking to explore. Middleton Fire has a Tesla Model 3. The City of Madison has 3 in their police fleet that are just getting ready to go up and running. And then I have to reach out to the Dane County Sheriff. I'm aware that they have one being equipped right now by our contracted vendor to hit the road here soon. And so, again, working with the Sustainability Committee and looking at ways we can improve our impact.
I can hear Alder Moore and the council members already cheering you for
Okay.
electric vehicles.
Yeah, one question on that. Do you have a charging setup that's readily available at the station itself?
Yeah, so that's what I figured in the pricing. We currently have one that we use for our Ford Fusion hybrid. But the pricing, I would add a level 2 charger to that. And it's set up right outside. I don't know, well, you are familiar where the police parking spaces are on the main level of City Hall. There's currently one level 2 there. My goal would be to add another level 2. Okay, so the total project cost for that is $95,400 that I'm asking for that replacement. Then I'll scroll down. This coincides, the next couple of these actually coincide with the replacement of the new squad. Again, it has an original older arbitrator in-car video system. So this is what we record what we use to record in the car. So separate from the body worn cameras that officers wear. That is about to due. And there's 2 issues when it comes to the hardware. Number one, the wear and tear that the hardware goes through about being in the vehicle that vibrates all the time, or in the elements, et cetera, or buttons being pushed. So there's normal wear and tear in the hardware, but also I think we all know, those of us especially who have Apple devices know that there are the longer you have the hardware, the more challenging it is to get software updates for the hardware. And so we run into issues if we keep retaining hardware for extended periods of time. Not only physically will they stand up, but if the software is going to be compatible. And so we have to, we rely on all of our systems being on the same Panasonic arbitrator system. And so this $6,200 would replace the outgoing arbitrator system in that one marked patrol squad that I'm looking to replace. Going on to item number 3, again, coinciding with the replacement of both marked and unmarked squads that are due. The replacement of the 2 radio systems. You've probably heard this for those of you who've been on the committee for some time, Chief Ostrenga mentioning these. We have 2 radio systems in our squad cars, and that is something that's new to me because City of Madison, we only had 1. Well, the City of Madison's on an 800 megahertz frequency. And so we didn't necessarily have a need for two. We need to communicate with two different radios, two different radio systems, both the Madison radio system in Dane County, as well as the Danecom and Wiscom very high frequency systems that are currently used. So each of our squad cars and unmarked squad cars have two radios, and they require two different units, hardware units as well. So the cost to replace those for the unmarked and the marked squad is $2,100 or $21,000. I wish it was $2,100. Radios are expensive. If those of you who are new-ish to the world of police radios and Motorola radios in particular, they run about $5,000 plus. They're really pricey, but they're top of the line. They are highly dependable. They are very rugged and are able to withstand the rigors of police work and fire work. And as Chief McMullen mentioned, we utilize our radios way more frequently than fire. And so this next item ranked number 4, but just as I think a higher priority to me in my mind is the replacement of 5 of our existing older Motorola portable radios that the officers wear. The concern is that the current hardware of existing radios is very much outdated. I'm actually wearing one of our older radios so that, if mine goes down, well, half the time I'm sitting in the office or having a meeting somewhere with a community member, that's not a major concern to me. I don't want that happening to our patrol officers who this radio is your lifeline out on the streets. And so I'm looking to replace 5 of our older model Motorola's, but the hardware is wearing down, as well as the ability to keep the software updated on the radios is becoming more challenging. And so the cost of that and the microphone that you might see pictured there will total about $27,500. That includes shipping. Moving on to what has been very entertaining for me in some regards is how to best deliver the message of slowing down in our community, and how best to make sure our officers are well equipped to do that job of enforcement. Part of the expectation I've heard from many, several of you, is that I and my officers do traffic enforcement. This is one of the many tools in which we utilize that. That's the radar device, both the front facing and rear facing radar antennas in each of our squads. Because we are replacing a squad that has a very old radar unit, hardware unit in it, this then coincides to replace the outgoing radar unit, and the cost of that with install is $3,000. And 6, this is something that is important. We cannot operate our body-worn cameras. We cannot operate our in-car video system. We cannot operate our interview room system that has the arbitrator recording system on it without the licenses. And so there's a typo there. It says the project is to purchase 28 Panasonic licenses. That's incorrect. I forgot to change that. It's actually 33. That's a typo too. 33 arbitrator licenses. That cost, however, is right, $12,144, 33 licenses, and that quote was new. We just received that, I believe, yesterday for the 33 licenses that we need, 32 of which expire next year, so we do need to renew that. The 33rd, so that last one, we have one more year on that. However, to make things uniform and consistent, I would like to have licenses start and end at the same time, so as we don't, have a gap year at any other time. So I'd like to move ahead and go with 33, which will be changed in the final version, arbitrator licenses. Any questions on? Yes, go ahead, Alder.
Who issues those licenses?
I'm sorry?
Who issues those licenses?
We have a contracted vendor called Baycom. They're a technology vendor that's on the state contract. I know the city of Madison uses them, we use them, and they're the ones that are responsible for issuing those software licenses, for purchasing and installing those software licenses for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, they run about, if you want the breakdown, $368 per license.
And how long do they last?
This is a 3-year license. I'm in the wrong business. I think all of us are.
Well, there are lots of ways to make money that we don't do, so.
Yes, no, you're right. No, I'm in the right business. Gosh darn it. Okay, so that is it for law enforcement. I'll scroll back up here so we can get a overview again. I correctly listed 32 arbitrator licenses on the amended copy here that's highlighted in yellow. Questions on those items before I move on to dispatch? Okay, let me scroll down to dispatch. Again, looking at ways in which we can cut down, prioritizing needs as you should expect any department head here to do. One of the things I did ask was seeing what video system cameras still need to be replaced. Obviously, there were incidents in 2020 that created a heightened sense of infrastructure security concerns at the PD here. I lived through Madison's experience with the firebombing of the Molotov cocktail being tossed into the city county building that was still occupied, and needing to really start thinking about infrastructure security to keep our staff and employees safe. One of the ways in which you do that is that you invest in security infrastructure. Prior to me getting here, those of you know, Chief Lestrenga had really started looking into replacing the analog camera systems that had been throughout the city, particularly City Hall. And there is one more that needs to be replaced, and that one just so overlooks Jerry, the fire department's parking area, as well as where we sometimes park our patrol squads before we pull them into the bay. And so that is one of the final cameras on the grounds here that we're looking to replace. My concern is that should we have a digital camera and IP camera go down, I would be asking the finance and the council for additional money because we have no replacement. This $2,000 provides an opportunity to keep an IP camera on hand, as well as replacing the analog camera that needs to be replaced in the event we do have a camera go down. And as we all know, hardware does fail. Second to that, I should have scrolled down and actually listed first, I should say, in my priority is we have very old, and these are actually pictures of them here, 800 megahertz radio systems that dispatch utilizes. So this is, the cities, how they communicate with Madison and Dane County. This hardware is, I used to have one of these in my old office as a captain, and I had one of the the oldest units in the whole police department, and that was just replaced prior to me leaving, and this matches it. So these are very, very old. The software is becoming more challenging to update these older units. As you can see here, we try to replace these every 7 to 10 years in order to adjust and make sure we're prepared for any compatibility needs with software updates, etc. This project to replace 3 of these radios, which there are 3, I just have 2 of them pictured here, is $16,000. And again, this is for a dispatch center.
Questions?
I will unshare my screen so you can see everyone. I'm sorry. There we go.
Okay, really, to both of you, chiefs, thank you for comprehensive explanation of your requests. So are there questions? If there are not questions, well, welcome, Sarah Duman. I would entertain a motion. Chief McMullen, you're on mute, but say something.
Yeah, I was waiting on mute until you recognized me, which is good. I just wanted to say something about Chief Cheney Austin's proposals in case there's a question, because we're both looking at replacing portable radios, and you'll notice there's quite a price difference between the two of them. With the fire department, we utilize Kenwood radios. We could utilize Motorola's. They are a higher dollar radio, but again, to try and be beneficial to our taxpayers, the Kenwoods do what we need them to do. They're reliable for the uses that we put them through, and easy to program in-house. So we try and save money that way as well. The Motorola's are not. They have to be programmed out of house. For police work, I 1000% support the Motorola radios for the police department. They're reliable, they're bulletproof, sometimes literally, where the Kenwoods work well for the fire department. I just want to say, in case somebody looks at it and goes, well, wait a second, there's a price difference of $17,000. Why can't you guys use what the fire department's using? For our uses, the Kenwoods work fine. The Motorola's are far better equipped for the police department. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case anybody had that question.
So before I ask for motion, I'll make a general comment. What I will say to both of you is that when you present your proposals to public safety, you generally will not get many questions, because that's the shtick of this committee. But when you get to the mayor and to the council, who has to look at capital requests and choose between all of the items for all of the departments of the city, you can expect more questions and not always so many smiles. I mean, sometimes the council has to pick and choose. And while police and fire, in the minds of many of us, should have number one over everything, other things are important. Public works things are important. So we're here to look at the obvious stuff, but we are generally such fans of both. At least I am, and I think I speak for the rest of you, of both of you, and you've done such a good job that we don't. If what you say makes sense, we trust your judgment. So if there are no questions, a motion to recommend the police dispatch capital budget proposal as presented by Chief Cheney Austin would be in order.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will go on to item 7, monthly financial reports. And I should say to you, I mean, I was one of this, I don't know that any of us want any detail, in-depth detail, but if there are significant cost overruns or cost savings, let us know. Having said that, I will start with Chief McMullen. Do you want to give us a financial report?
Other than saying things are going well, we're actually right where we should be with our new billing company. The revenue will build in more as we get more old money to pull from. But we hit where we needed to for the last 2 months straight. So I think we're on the right track. And we do have a member coming back off of deployment August 10th. So there has been a significant cost savings on the salary line items and the health insurance line items for that individual for the entire year. He'll actually be back in service with us, I believe, in September 4th at this point. So he'll be back off of deployment. So that's what I've got for financials.
Good, thank you. Chief Cheney Austin?
We are sitting well. As many of you know, we were short staffed through most of the year. You hired a new police chief, so there's one. And I just worked to extend conditional job offers for 2 employees who will start on August 12th. And I think I got the date right. I will be doing a press release on those individuals in the very near future so that the public is made aware of who those persons are. They will need the police academy, so they'll be going off to Madison College for the 720-hour police academy. And then when they come back to us in December, mid-late December, they'll have to start field training. So we will not see the staffing impacts of them until they're completed, likely late winter, early spring. That's all.
Any questions? If not, we will move down to future agenda items. Is there anything that any of you would like to see us put on the agenda or discuss? Chief McMullen, is that you?
That would be me. The only thing I have for you for next month is we have started the process for fire billing with LifeQuest. We've got the outline, we've got all the pieces in place. So I'll give a little presentation to you folks next month to show you how that's working and what they're doing for us. So.
Is there any, Chief Cheney Austin?
If we have too full of an agenda, because we will be reviewing hopefully a draft version of the ordinance, I have met with the Safe Communities, which is a nonprofit organization in the Dane County, Madison area. I have a long history of working with the good folks there, and their goal is to create safe environments in a safe community. And part of what they focus on is traffic safety. And so I had a conversation with the executive director, and she has offered, either she or one of her lead staff members has offered to present to this body and talk about what that organization might be able to provide the city of Monona. So that would be something we would want to add to an agenda item.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I'll reach out to see if they are available for the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Anything from any of the members? Anything from you, Sarah? Okay. We will then move to reports, and I would ask either of the chiefs, the mayor talked about the public safety building at the last council meeting and the progress, and I would ask you to include that in your reports. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first because I'm unmuted. So, and I'll include an update about the public safety building. So that way Chief Cheney Austin doesn't have to worry about that. I've got a few items from July. First one is going to be our festival update. The festival is a success as far as we're concerned. We had a metric ton of volunteer staffing, 417 volunteer hours from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the festival. So we got some really good feedback. We had staff down there all weekend long. I was there all weekend. People really enjoyed seeing the number of firefighters and EMTs down there, along with as many trucks as we had down there throughout the weekend. So, and we only had one call from the festival itself for the fire and EMS side. So I consider that a success. We do have 3 new volunteers that just started a couple weeks ago that are already in our process. I've already got 9 more as of today applications. So what we're trying to do now within our existing public safety building shell is to try and find room to be able to accommodate a few more volunteers. Since we have so much interest, we're doing our best to try and find additional space to be able to house gear for a few more volunteers. So I'll have more on that next month. I think we have an idea to hopefully bring on another 4 if the space works out.
If I can interrupt you, I would suggest to you and to Chief Cheney Austin, when you get new staff members, when you get volunteers, that, the public appearance section is a nice time to introduce them to the council and to the community. So we know who they are and they feel comfortable with the council. And I just think that's nice to welcome them. And we so appreciate their service. And the same when we get new officers, Chief Cheney Austin. So I know it's an inconvenience having them come to the meetings, but it's greatly appreciated when they do that.
I actually think that they would appreciate being recognized for the most part. So I don't think that's an inconvenience. So I appreciate the feedback. So we will definitely start doing that. I have some ideas along that route anyway. So on the full-time side, our sole full-time member that's been on probation for the last year comes off probation August 1st. So he's been doing very well for us. I reached out to Monona Grove this week. I'm meeting with the new athletic director tomorrow. We're gonna work on getting an ambulance back to our high school football games like we've done. It's been several years since we've had one, but we're gonna restart that and have an ambulance out at our high school football games as of this fall. National Night Out is in 2 weeks or a little under 2 weeks. Not sure what all is going to turn up there. It's a surprise even for me sometimes, but it should be a fun night. So come on out from 5 to 8. We have under the training sidelines, we have the bowling alley. The owner's been very good about basically giving us free reign within that bowling alley for both police and fire. We're actually going to start training in it next week, all the way through the end of October at this point. We've also reached out to area departments. I met with City of Madison Fire, would have been Monday afternoon. They're looking to come down and train with us. I've reached out to other area departments, so I expect to see, if you see McFarland, Cottage Grove, Deerfield, Oregon, Maple Bluff, any of those type of fire departments cruising through Monona, odds are good they're going to the bowling alley to train with us. So we're trying to make this more of a regional benefit and not just for us. Last thing I'll talk about is the PSB. I did my best to attend the council meeting last Monday, but technology didn't quite agree. It decided I needed to be on vacation and not in the council meeting. But I wanted to say publicly, I appreciate that the council was looking to move forward a little bit on this item. So I have, as of this afternoon, created a RFP for a feasibility study for the location of our current fire station, which would include some basic architectural drawings, site planning, cost estimates to show the feasibility of the public safety building being placed on our current 1.3 acres, which is what we have for a site. So I just created the first draft today, reached out to a couple of architectural folks that I'm familiar with to review it, make sure I'm not missing anything terrible or that I've added something terrible. I pushed it out to Chief Cheney Austin and to Administrator Gatto this afternoon to also give me some feedback, and we should hopefully be moving forward on that fairly quickly.
Yeah, for the committee, the city looked at some sites. They looked behind Nichols School. They looked at a variety of places, and they've now, while they've not made the final determination, what they're looking at now is building it, putting it on the current site behind City Hall, which it'll be interesting. There are those who say it will fit, and we hope it will.
So just so you're aware, again, I'm a very transparent guy. We had 5 Bugles come out in early January as a favor to me to walk the site with myself and some of our police folks to see if it was a feasible spot to basically give us a yes or no. Can they fit it on here or not? They came back and said, yes, they could. That it would be a unique spot and we would have a unique public safety building, but it would fit on the site. That was the only guidance they gave. So the next step is for whoever gets the RFP to show us that it would fit. Is the goal, is how feasible is this site for the needs that we have for both police and fire. So that's all it's limited to. It's not limited to anything more than that or expanded anything more than that.
I can tell you, or I can assure you that the mayor and the current council members are all committed to a new public safety building. You know, it's not going to, what are we talking about, being done in 2025? Even at the fastest, if we start, the sooner the better, and we start going, it's going to be a while, but they are committed to doing it. They want to do it before, you know, and make it firm so that when those of us who are so committed to us are no longer there, that it will still go forward. So there's absolute intense interest in proceeding with this, being led by the mayor.
And I appreciate that. I think, I know it's a big project, and there's a lot of big projects within the city, not just the public safety building. So I won't speak for police, but I can tell you from the fire and EMS side that we appreciate it. So that was the last thing I had, was the piece on the PSB.
Chief Cheney Austin?
The chief can speak for me anytime. Chief, I spoke for you at the my council meeting, said you wouldn't mind. So yes, I too am very appreciative. One of our staff members pointed out to me that this building was built, I think the year after Lambeau Field was built, I think is how I'm going to be referencing that. There's two things when I first walked into this building. I promise I'll be brief. Is that I was frankly surprised by the limitations of our space here. There are some technology needs, but we frankly don't have the space to put technology. If we were to add staff, there's no place to put them. Embarrassingly, the women's locker room is humiliatingly small, if that's even a word, in comparison to the men's locker room. It is very much that century time frame of probably ideology of what the spaces were needed for when it was designed. And so and the other thing I'll say, although it's not the main reason, but I'll also mention it to Jerry's point of when he spoke about and did well in advocating for the bolt, is I have to be competitive. And when I show or give ride-alongs to prospective officers, yes, they want to do it because it's the right thing to do. It's a calling. But I'm also competing with Madison. I'm competing with McFarland, who's going to get a new PD here soon. I'm competing with all these other agencies that have 21st century police departments, physical buildings. And so I very much appreciate that everyone understands that we need a new facility, that it's well overdue. I think many of the members made mention at council. And so I'll just echo that. I very much appreciate that as well. And if any of you have not had the time or opportunity to walk through our facilities, I think the chief and I are going to be doing something more formal maybe next month, Jerry, I think it was, a sort of an open house, but don't wait for that. Get a hold of Chief McMullen or I. If you've not stepped foot in this building, this part of the building, we're happy to give you a tour. And I'm going to record the expression on your face when I do. I just want to, again, say to what the chief mentioned about the community festival, that it was a successful event. From a police side, I did have some concerns. July 3rd was a very eventful day for the city of Madison. So there was an event at Bree Stevens Field, a small fireworks display there. There was no Shake the Lake, as many of us know. They had a very, very violent night of fights. Something has been described as 100-person plus fight that occurred. State Street erupted. They needed all hands on deck, and I'd gotten wind of that information, and there were some concerns that some of that violent behavior was going to transfer over to July 4th at our community festival. So the chief and I made sure that we were on the same page. We shared that information with our staff. The goal of the day was engagement and making sure our presence was visible and known, and that we interacted with folks, said hi, hello, how are you doing? I myself interrupted one fight from young persons that were out there, and made sure that they knew we were there. Quickly responded with the command vehicle 1 having a good overwatch of the boom camera, so we were able to look down on the crowds from a bird's eye view to make sure everyone was safe. And I think our collaboration with police and fire is something that you can expect to see at any event that we have here in Monona. And so I do agree that this was a successful event, and I look forward to working with parks, the community organizers, and all staff and fire for future events. I'll just mention that COVID is still real, and it's still making an impact on staffing here. What I mean by that is we have had encounters in which officers have been exposed to COVID positive individuals that has resulted in needing to quarantine those officers, which, as you can imagine, with a 18-person organization, that greatly impacts staffing. And so it's sort of everyone else has to come in, has to cancel days off, et cetera, to fill in the void, to fill in the blanks. I actually had Lieutenant Weigel, who I see is on the call here today. You don't have to turn your camera on, Kurt, I'm just calling you out. I actually had to do an ED conveyance to Winnebago. The lieutenant did, because we didn't have the staffing to help facilitate that conveyance. And so I, of course, sent out the reminder to my staff that COVID is real. It's still alive, and it's still, unfortunately, killing people on this planet every day. I made directives to those who are not vaccinated to that they shall wear proper PPE, to include eye protection gloves and masks when they're interacting with any persons, whether they're vaccinated or not. Those subjects in which they contact. And so thank you, Chief McMullen, for your support and for providing equipment to support that directive to keep our officers and staff here safe. Training, that's an ongoing priority for me as well. The lieutenants and I have had meetings with various trainers with respect to trauma-informed care training that I want to bring on board here, as well as unconscious implicit bias training. We just met with Nehemiah Center. I think that was earlier today. My days are all wound up. Nehemiah Center earlier today to talk about potential training that they can provide us later in the year as well. That's a priority to me, to make sure that our staff receives that training and that it's ongoing. And so some of, the only one on council is Alder Thomas today, but you should see perhaps a request in ongoing operating budgets for me, specifically as it relates to that type of training to be included in my budget on an annual basis. I know that there's funding set aside this year, but I don't think that this is a one and done thing. School board, I've met with all but one school board members in discussions about, number one, who their new chief is at Monona, what they can expect from me as reflects my vision and philosophy on providing high quality police services to our community, but also answer any questions that they might have in regards to the SRO, and in our case, the SRO in the high school. I can tell you that those conversations have been productive. There's been a lot of learning. There's been a lot of information sharing. And the final board member I hope to meet this Friday. I have been asked, as well as Chief Dan Labor from Cottage Grove, have been asked to sit in on a special session of the Monona Grove School Board next week, Monday, I believe it is. And so we will be there to offer any information and answer any questions that the school board might have as they consider whether or not to enter into contract to retain the SRO program. I have said this at Common Council. I'll say so in this venue as well. I 100% and wholeheartedly support, for a variety of reasons, the SRO in our schools, and particularly in our high school. I think that we will be doing a disservice to our students, faculty, and others in our schools should we remove that resource. And I will underscore, highlight, bold, resource, because I think that that is what the goal should be, is to provide a law enforcement resource to the school with respect to school safety, with respect to investigations, but we are not going to handle moving forward some of the behaviors in which the school administration should be handling. The minor squabbles, the minor, status offenses like tobacco, et cetera. Those should be retained by the school and should be addressed by the school. Alder Thomas, I'm sorry, did you?
No, that was my husband, and I was telling him I was.
Get away. Okay. So we'll see how that goes. One of the things I also am looking forward to is having, should they pursue that and retaining the SRO, is an extended contract that goes beyond 1 year. I don't think a 1 year contract is feasible for a variety of reasons. Number one, the budget cycle and constantly having to adjust for this question on if the SRO is going to be in our schools or not. That is best, in my opinion, for a multi-year contract, but that's obviously something that'll be negotiated between all the governing bodies that are in play. But that is just my 2 cents that, in my opinion, we should aim and strive for a 3-year contract. Review. I have been doing sort of an in-depth review and analysis of all of our policies, general orders, and operating procedures, and looking at ways in which to combine those so that they're frankly easy to follow both externally as well as internally. I've had a good deal of outside help and opinions, and people are willing to offer some guidance and change with respect to some of the higher ticket item, I'll call it, policies. Mary, I see that you're on here. You don't have to respond, but I'll say that Mary has been helpful in providing some guidance and some doing a little bit of ghostwriting for me in my busy time. So I hope to present to you, this committee, a proposed draft of policy that will impact our community, and the first being a pursuit policy that was revamped. And I don't think you'll see anything shocking in there, but you'll see that there are some structural changes, and there are some added language that best supports and offers guidance to our mission as a police department and as a community in our goal to keep everyone safe, including the suspects involved in crimes in which we're pursuing. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that and thank everyone for their assistance in that. And then lastly, a couple things. Of course, I've been out and about, meeting everyone I can, doing as many PSAs as I can. It's been great. Many of you have recommended that I meet individuals. I still have not had a chance to sit and have hot chocolate with some of you, so that is still on the table. So please consider that if you're interested, want to show me around, want to introduce me to members of our community. In doing that, I did have a chance to meet with leaders of the Ho-Chunk community that have, as we all know, the First Nations were the first people here in Monona and in this country and in our lands. And so it was important for me to pay my respects to them and to have dialogue with the First Nations people, particularly the Ho-Chunk leadership. And I had that great opportunity to have that with them. And so those are the opportunities I'm looking for. And with that respect, in that same vein, there's no secret about, I'm looking for public input. And part of that is the thought I have of creating what's called a Chiefs Roundtable, in which I'll be able to offer members of the public who may not necessarily be comfortable communicating or relaying information to me or giving advice to me in a forum such as this, in a public forum. Oftentimes I hear from persons that look like me that these venues aren't necessarily safe spaces for them. And so I'm looking into creating environments and going into their spaces or going into churches or wherever, so that we can engage in courageous conversation and really talk about ways in which we can improve the quality of police services and redefine safety for all persons in our community here. And so that Chiefs Roundtable is really starting to formulate. I'll be very candid with you and tell you that I'm handpicking individuals, people who have been very critical of police and people who have been supportive of police, and those who are sort of in between. I want to hear from everybody. And so it should reflect both culturally diverse group, but as well as ideology too. I'm looking for that as well. And hopefully we'll come out as a better agency with getting some advice. Now that doesn't take away from the role and function of this body. I do see the differences between the two. What I'd like to do is bounce ideas off of them, hear things from them, get some experiences and history that they may have had, good or bad, and try to incorporate that in some of the changes that I hope to bring here today, in my tenure here. And then maybe if it's in concrete form or close to it in draft form, I'll present that to this body so that I can get this committee's opinion and they can weigh in. So that's the external outreach. Internally, my staff, I recently created a staff advisory committee represented by commissioned and non-commissioned staff here. We meet for the first time, I think, on August 5th. And so that's sort of very similar concept. They will be sort of presenting ideas in which they think that areas of improvement for the workforce and for the workplace. And at the same time, I have a whole lot of ideas that I want to bounce off of them to make sure that, this wonderful Oz-like Cheney Austin's ideas isn't going to necessarily be the downfall of the Monona Police Department. I want to be able to bounce things off of the people who've been here way longer than I to see if it will work here. Now, I will not run this organization by vote or by committee, and they have already prefaced that, and they know that. That was one of the few times in which I'll remind folks that I am the chief. However, their input is important to me, and if I am completely off base with something, I want to know that. And so that's what that advisory committee is for, that staff advisory committee. And I've already been told that they have a long laundry list of items that they want to share with me. So looking forward to that conversation as well. And that is all I have. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything from the Police and Fire Commission?
Chief Cheney Austin mentioned our one major update. We had met earlier this month to approve the 2 candidates that he mentioned. And we have no further meetings scheduled at this time, but I know we've been talking about forward-looking considerations with both chiefs, so there may be more updates to come.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for either of the chiefs? If not, the next meeting is scheduled for August 25th. I think many of the committees are starting to meet in person. And if COVID doesn't get worse, I would suggest that we will probably do the same. I don't want to absolutely commit to it. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that we talked about this and people are ready to start doing that. So we could meet at the City Hall, or if you want to be able to spread out more, we could try and meet down at the community room where the council meets, where we could, sort of spread out in a bigger space. But actually, if we meet at City Hall, I think there are enough chairs there that we could sit almost every other person and spread out a bit if you'd like to. So be prepared for that, unless I hear from someone who has drastic concerns about meeting in person, in which case we'll consider holding off for a while. But that I know of, I don't think anybody has any drastic concerns. So having said that, if anybody would like to call it a night, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.